On the average airline ticket sold this year, the carrier flying you keeps, after fuel and crew and gate fees and aircraft leases and everything else, somewhere between $5 and $8 per passenger for the entire trip. On the average cruise leaving the same continent, the company carrying you will pull in something closer to $90 in onboard spending, not on the ticket, on top of the ticket, every day you're on the boat. Two industries that do, on the surface, the same thing: move large numbers of strangers somewhere fun for a few days. Two industries with marketing departments down the street from each other. And two industries whose financial statements look like they belong in different centuries. The natural explanation, if you ask anyone, is that cruises are more profitable because the ticket includes more: food, lodging, entertainment, transport. You're buying a hotel and a restaurant and a theme park and the flight all at once, so of course there's more meat on the bone. It's a tidy theory. It also doesn't survive 10 minutes with Carnival Corporation's annual report, where the ticket revenue and the onboard revenue are listed as separate lines, and the onboard line is doing more profitability work than the ticket line is. The all-inclusive theory accounts for almost none of it. What actually separates the two industries, once you start pulling the filings apart, is that they aren't competing in the same business. They aren't even competing in the same regulatory universe. Airlines are stuck inside a structure that taxes them, regulates them, and prices them like the transportation companies they are. Cruise lines spent the last 100 years quietly arguing themselves into a different category, one with very different rules. The visible margin gap between the two industries isn't operational excellence, it's a structural advantage hiding behind a vacation. Start with the airline. Almost every domestic flight in the United States is operated by a U.S. incorporated carrier under U.S. labor law in airspace policed by U.S. federal agencies, between airports run by American municipalities. The fuel is heavy, the gates are scarce, the unions are real, and the corporate income tax is the standard 21%. The route map is fragmented across dozens of competitors. Yields on a transcontinental flight get ground down by Spirit and Frontier the way coastal rocks get ground down by waves. There is nowhere on the balance sheet for an airline to hide. A cruise ship operates in a different country, several different countries actually, sometimes within the same morning. The ship sails what the law calls international waters, which is shorthand for nobody's tax base. Its hull flies what's called a flag of convenience, meaning the company picked which country's rulebook the ship plays under, the way you might pick which state to register an LLC in based on whichever charges the lowest fee. Most of the major fleet flies Bahamian, Panamanian, Liberian, or Marshall Islands flags. The crew works under the Maritime Labor Convention, an international agreement that sets a global wage floor rather than a country-specific one. Same hull, same passengers, completely different rulebook from the airline that brought those passengers to the port. The geography isn't the setting of the cruise business, the geography is the cruise business. Which raises the question of what specifically that legal geography lets a cruise company keep. To see that, you have to walk into an office tower in downtown Miami. Walk into the lobby. The sign over the door reads Carnival Corporation. The executives ride the elevators in the morning, the advertising shoots happen on the rooftop, the board meetings sign off on multi-billion-dollar shipbuilding contracts upstairs. The CEO lives within driving distance. The customer base is overwhelmingly American. Everything you can see and touch about this company is American. The company is not American. Carnival Corporation, the company that owns Carnival Cruise Line, Princess, Holland America, Cunard, Costa, P&O, Seaburn, Ida, and a few more for good measure, the company whose ships sail out of Miami and Galveston and Long Beach and Seattle, the company you have almost certainly handed money to at some point in your life, even if it was through a different brand name on the ticket, is incorporated in the Republic of Panama. It gets better. Royal Caribbean Group, headquartered a few miles up the same Miami highway, is incorporated in Liberia. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, also Miami-based, is incorporated in Bermuda. All three are publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. All three keep their executives in South Florida. None of the three are, in any tax residency sense, American companies. 3 corporations, 3 foreign charters, 1 American city, 1 overwhelmingly American customer base, 1 American IRS, which collects almost nothing from any of them. The mechanism that makes this work is a paragraph in the U.S. tax code called Section 883, a clause sitting in the Internal Revenue Code in one form or another since the Revenue Act of 1921. Section 883 does something simple. It tells the IRS to keep its hands off income a foreign shipping company earns operating ships internationally as long as the foreign country grants the same favor to American shipping companies. A diplomatic handshake written into the tax code, more than 100 years old. The rationale in 1922 made sense. A Greek tanker captain calling at New York shouldn't have to pay corporate income tax to both Athens and Washington for the same load of olive oil. So countries struck reciprocal deals. You don't tax our shipping, we won't tax yours, and we both go home happy. It was an elegant fix to the problem of double taxation in an era when ocean shipping meant cargo, and a Margaritaville-themed pool deck wasn't yet anyone's idea of an industry. That clause is what now stands between Carnival's onboard piano bar and the U.S. corporate tax rate. Because here's what Section 883 actually covers. Not just the fare, but substantially all income from operating the ship internationally. The bar tabs, the casino chips, the spa appointments, the photo packages, the specialty restaurant covers. The whole onboard economy rides under the same exempt status as the ticket. The structure isn't trapping passengers into being the one taxable piece. It's letting the company monetize them without the tax friction a Florida resort hotel doing the same thing would face on every transaction, which is the part that turns one tax loophole into an industry. The same 3 companies that escaped the IRS also did something quieter on the consumer side. They bought everyone. The big 3, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, together with one large European competitor, MSC, control roughly 80% of global cruise capacity. Carnival alone operates Carnival, Princess, Holland America, Cunard, Costa, P&O, Ida, and Seaburn. Royal Caribbean owns Royal Caribbean, Celebrity, and Silversea. Norwegian owns Norwegian, Oceania, and Regent. The competition between Princess and Holland America that you might be comparing for a fall sailing is a competition entirely inside Carnival Corporation's portfolio. Same owner, same CFO, same yield management team. Which means the prices you compare are not really competing, they're segmenting. One brand for retirees, another for families, another for luxury, another for a younger crowd, and the parent company picks up the revenue regardless of which one you pick. Real cruise industry pricing, the kind that would actually drive yields down, would require 50 independent operators trying to undercut each other. There aren't 50 operators, there are functionally 3 pricing brains, occasionally bumping into MSC. The cabin pricing on a given week feels like it's been negotiated. It's been curated. And once you see who controls the price, the next question is what's actually being sold. If you ask a passenger what they bought, they'll say a cruise. If you ask the marketing department, they'll say a vacation. If you ask the booking site, the line item is a fare with port fees attached. Everything about the transaction looks like the ticket is the thing being purchased. The ticket is not the thing being purchased. In Carnival Corporation's 2024 annual report, the actual document filed with the SEC available to anyone with an internet connection, 34% of cruise revenue is listed under onboard and other. That's the bar, the casino, the spa, the photo packages, the specialty restaurants, the shore excursions, the duty-free shop, the cabin upgrade you didn't intend to buy on day 3. 34 cents of every revenue dollar happens after you've already boarded the ship. The numbers underneath that average are sharper. In the second quarter of 2024, Norwegian's passengers spent on average $126.85 per person per day on board. Royal Caribbean spent $92.44. Carnival spent $83.41 per passenger per day. On a 7-day sailing, that's between $500 and $900 of additional spend per person, sitting on top of whatever the ticket said. For comparison, the airline carrying you to that same cruise port retains somewhere between $5 and $8 on the entire round trip. The ticket is the door. The 7-day captive environment is the product. Once you see the captive environment as the product, the rest of the ship starts to look different. The drink package isn't generosity, it's a behavioral instrument calibrated to the dollar amount most passengers can talk themselves into prepaying, multiplied by the dollar amount most passengers would actually have spent paying drink by drink, with the prepayment usually winning. The casino isn't placed at random, it's positioned on the foot traffic spine between the cabins and the dining rooms, so walking to dinner is a small daily exposure to slot machines. The interior cabin isn't small because the Finnish shipyard was stingy with steel. It's the highest revenue per square meter slot the ship can sell, and it's deliberately uncomfortable enough to push you out the door and into the spaces where the spending happens. The free main dining room is the funnel that makes specialty restaurants feel like an upgrade. The free pool is the funnel that makes the photo package feel like a souvenir. Every generous feeling inclusion is the front of a monetization corridor, which is the moment most people start asking a perfectly reasonable question. Why don't airlines just do this? They tried. The legal geography wouldn't let them. Section 883 specifically applies to the international operation of ships. The IRS has held the line that flights between two U.S. cities aren't international transportation in the relevant sense, and most airline revenue by route count is domestic. Even on international routes, the destination country generally has its own claim on the income. There is nowhere for an airline to flag itself in Liberia and call its New York to Los Angeles flight a foreign shipping operation. The structural advantage cruise lines enjoy isn't a strategy airlines failed to copy. It's a category airlines were structurally locked out of from the start. This is not a story about who was clever. It's a story about what each industry was legally allowed to be. Airlines retain $6 per passenger because they have to. Cruise lines retain vastly more because they don't have to be airlines. So next time you're standing on a pool deck and you happen to glance back at the stern, where the flag is, Panama or Liberia or the Bahamas, that flag isn't a registration detail. It isn't a quirk of maritime tradition. It's the actual product. The ship is the wrapper, the vacation is the receipt. That's another one for the cruise files. If you want to learn more about what goes on behind the giant cruise ships, everything from the scams on board to the secrets below deck, subscribe, like, and share. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.